Hello, everyone. This is Matilda from Coffee with Matilda, A Journey to Self. Today, I am back with Jon Freeman for another episode of Relationship Secrets. Today, we're going to talk about what do you know about relationships and where do you get them from? I think this is hello, John. First,
Hi,
let's start with
Matilda.
that. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. And you?
How Very good. How's the weather? It's getting chilly
It's
here.
well, it's pleasant uh, here today, as opposed to being horribly hot like it has been for the last couple of weeks. So I'm quite grateful to not be melting in my office here.
Very nice. Well, I think today's episode is very interesting because we're gonna show and we're gonna talk about what is maybe if we start what is even a relationship. So we can dive into the concept that why do we have to pay attention to our relationships in lives, and how do we what where are the references? I mean, is it coming from ourselves, or it's the society that's dictating how our relationship should be in our lives? So let's start. What is a relationship, John? How do you define one?
Um, there's so many possible ways of defining a relationship, but I think the big frame for me would be to say that this is just the nature of your connection with something or someone else, and we can perhaps narrow that to being someone else. I mean, you can have a relationship with your pet, but what we mean by relationships in terms of what we're talking about here is definitely focused on
Mm.
humans, and particularly on the context of people wanting to have a special human in their life, which is a fairly natural and common thing for people to do.
And why do they exist? Like, why do we have relationships?
So the bottom line is really very biological, that we wouldn't exist as a species if we hadn't evolved like all the other parts of the animal kingdom to come together and procreate. And that has a couple of special things about it if you're a human, because for animals, if you're a mouse, procreation is really simply about the act of copulation, and a bunch of babies show up, a few weeks later, and it only takes another couple of weeks before they're fit to survive in the world. With humans, it's very different from that, because it takes 15 or 20 years to raise a child. And
Mhm.
so we have a context for relationships which is built around all the things which ensure that that is going to happen as well as it possibly can, and to bring up healthy children to the point where they will survive in the world. So there are these underpinnings that run deep in ourselves, in our genetics, in our evolution. But then on top of that, we have a much more modern uh, take on that, which is all the things that we overlay on relationships, which may be very different than that and not always aligned with that.
Mhm.
So that's where a lot of the interesting things about relationships start to show up often.
So we say relationships is fundamental for us. So why is it that relationship is the core of being human being, and we're still struggling from it? I mean, why we don't learn how to have like nice relationships, like other fundamental things in human beings that we learn it from the beginning, and we're doing it pretty. we don't have a complexity over there. But with relationship, when it comes to relationship, I think everyone struggles. If it's not with your partner, it's maybe with your business partner, maybe it's with your children, maybe it's with your lovers, or friends. I never met any human being that never talked about or never struggled about his failed relationships in one area or another. So why is that? Nobody talks about, oh, we want to eat. I don't know how to eat something. We need to control something, but other, or sleep wise,
Yeah.
nobody says, I don't know how to sleep.
Yeah, and so this is kind of about all the complex things we do with our brains. I mean, there are things which are very natural to us, like eating and sleeping, and which we do because they're very much survival instincts. And then there are things that we learn about those, like if you want to eat well, you might want to learn how to cook.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody teaches us about relationships. You don't the if you're lucky, depending on your schooling system, you might get taught the basics of how sex happens, and probably how to avoid social diseases and avoid unwanted pregnancies, and that's about as much as they teach you about that. So relationships is something, it's kind of somehow it's assumed that everybody is going to be able to do this without any thought, without any training, without any help. And alongside that total lack of training and help and support, you have the fact that what we are doing now with relationships is really complicated. And I mean, as you've said, that it's a relationship is different with a business partner or children, and there are aspects that are very specific to those ways of working that people can get into. But even with the kind of one-to-one quotes romantic relationship, or there are so many different ways that people look at this. And one of the one of the issues that I would say is completely central to the conversation that we're having is that I would be asking each person who's hearing this to say, what do I really want? And to start to discover the difference between what I really want and what everybody else says I'm supposed to want, and what that looks like. Because I mean, there's the kind of fairly obvious standard things that you might well have parents whose ambition is for you to produce grandchildren for them to play with. And that's a pretty common scenario. You might well have parents who are embedded in a culture where who you choose to marry with, to marry or to have a relationship with, is something which is not just about who you are and how you feel and what kind of relationship you might have. It's about, what does this do for the family? I mean, there's a TV series running at the moment on UK TV about that's based on a book called A Suitable Boy by Vikram Seth. And a lot of the narrative, a lot of the story is about the determination of the girl Lata's mother to find a suitable boy for her to be with. Now, there's a lot of cultures where that would happen. I mean, okay, it's set a few decades ago, but the notion in many cultures of arranged marriages has not gone away. So there's kind of threads like that which run through who we individually are, and that have very little to do with what do I want. So I'm kind of encouraging every listener to kind of get into something deeper about, okay, what is really nourishing to my life, and how am I going to set about making this be about my life and not about what everybody else thinks my relationships are supposed to be. I mean, it's very common these days for people to choose, I am not going to have children. Even the ones who might choose to have long-term relationships might still make the choice, sorry, mum and dad, there's no grandkids coming.
Find it somewhere else. The shop is closed. Well, what I want listeners to really understand as well, that the quality of your relationships is very important in your life, because I feel like if you have good relationships, meaningful relationships, then your life is more joyful. What's a life of a very rich man that doesn't have meaningful relationships? I think it's very empty. So, or you are very, very successful business wise, but you don't have caring and loving people that you can share your success with, then what's it for? Am I not right? So I
Well,
want.
for a lot of people, you're right. I mean, there are some people who really are, that's just what they want to do, and they get their fulfillment out of building the business or out of making money, and they don't share your need or mine to have somebody to share that journey with. So even the way you ask the question, it's like to be very aware, for the listeners to be very aware of the notion of right and wrong,
Yeah.
as distinct from I have a choice here. What's my choice? How do I want to live my life?
But if you don't have, but John, if you don't have anybody that you know that they truly love you, I mean, you're gonna feel empty, no?
Some people don't. I mean, not
How is
many.
that
I think
possible?
I, I don't know. I'm not inside. I'm not inside. I'm not inside the mind and body of a person who feels that. But I know that I've kind of read of such people or seen such people who who are maybe talking on TV, and it's just they're perfectly okay because they're fulfilled by their business or by their career as a musician or as an actor, and they're getting what they get from their from it's not unusual for this to happen among people in various kinds of arts, that they're consumed by their relationship with their art, and that is fulfilling for them.
Yeah, I always think, I mean, in New York, I met a lot of interesting and very successful people, a lot of people who were, paid attention to their maybe career a lot, or their success. That was a main thing, that maybe they're in New York. And I felt at the end of the day, okay, you have all this success, all this, but you're alone at home, or you come home, you hang out with a bunch of people that they're around because of your success, not necessarily that truly, authentically, they love you and care for you. And I always feel bad for them, but maybe I shouldn't. Maybe it's just my way of thinking that, what's life if you don't have um, true friends? What's life if you don't have family to come home to? Or I don't know.
Yeah, and the majority of people probably do have something of that. And of course, there can be a timing thing for, there are some people who are just consumed by the kind of scenario you just described, and then at some point it kicks in. They think, okay, maybe I would like to add
Mm.
relationship and they might be 40 years old before they come to that feeling. So it doesn't have a particular shape. And I think where I'm coming from is for any person to feel free to shape their life according to their own choice, because it's yours, it's your life.
I guess I'm judgmental. I guess that's what's happening here. I'm judging people based on their choices that they've done. And it's interesting, you're opening my eyes and I'm thinking, who am I to think that way of living, it will be more suitable for him or for her. So I just need to take care of my life the way that I want it.
Well, that's true. And then there's the other side of this. I'm not going to entirely contradict myself, but the other side of it is that there are people who do that, who go into that kind of solitary mode because actually there's something they're afraid of about going into a relationship, and it means being vulnerable, or it means being out of control, or lots of things which are fundamental in that way. And equally, there are people who are going into relationship because they have the notion, which I think is really damaging, that there is a person out there who is going to complete them.
Yeah.
And that leads to a lot of mythologies around the one and soulmates, and I'm even in saying that, I'm not saying that there cannot be such a thing as a soulmate, and that some people will find a relationship that actually fits that picture. But it's when you make it like, that's my ambition, that's what my life is about, and possibly it's not. Possibly that is not what you incarnated to do this time round, and there are going to be relationships through which you're going to learn and grow, which will be more challenging than that. I mean, most of us, I think, most of the people I know and have witnessed over the decades, they're on a learning curve with relationships. They're learning about themselves. They're learning about how to be with another. They're learning about how somebody else pushes their control buttons. They're learning about how have I come into this from my own need, rather than coming in, I'm filled, I'm a vibrant human being, and we are going to add to each other. But I don't need you in that deep kind of I am lost without you place. There's so many dynamics in this, and they're actually very core to who we are as people.
That's interesting, because one of the, I really love relationships, and actually I've been fascinated about to learn about relationships and how to connect with people to create relationships. And I think I'm good at it. I don't know. My friends, they say I'm good at it. I don't know. But what's very interesting and why I love meeting new people and creating relationships is because I find more about myself through people that I have relationship with. Is it business, even a business relationship, I learn a different side of me, or different people in general bring different sides of you. And it's interesting when you're interacting with them, sometimes you even surprise yourself, like, wow, I was this awesome and I didn't know, Matilda. But sometimes the opposite. You get shocked what you've done or what you've said, or sometimes what you feel. And then, maybe if people understand, they take relationship in a way that they are mirrors to who you are. And so if you're feeling some problems with someone, maybe if you have to go deep inside you and to realize what is the issue that it's bothering you, rather than putting and saying, oh, he is the problem or she's the problem.
Totally. Totally. And one of the quickest ways to send a relationship downhill is to live from the space where you think it's somebody else's problem. So for people to learn to navigate that process always from the point of view of kind of what can I change, what can I learn, and who can I be, up to the point where it's either clear that you no longer want to be with that person as they are because that isn't what truly is suiting you, or where you are able to make the shift and the choice in yourself to be to deal with your own issues so that you can honor that other person for who they are and not think that they're supposed to be somebody else and to be somebody other than who they are.
Very nice, because lots of times, and I've done that gazillion times, and maybe I'm still doing it. I don't know. I have to focus on that. I like people to treat me the way that I want them to treat, or I want from a specific relationship a certain outcome. And sometimes I manipulate to have that outcome, or sometimes I don't know. But yeah, maybe I manipulate to have that certain outcome. So I don't think I just leave it as it is and enjoy the
Well,
person as they
yeah,
are.
I mean, it is a balance. You're entitled to to want what you want and to receive what you choose to receive, and to ask to be treated the way you would like to be treated, because honoring goes both ways. I mean, you want to, I'm saying honor the other person for who they are, but there is also an expectation or a realistic, reasonable desire that in a relationship, the other person should also be honoring you for who you are. So what then becomes interesting is kind of recognizing the difference between who they are for themselves and honoring that, and not who they are for you, but what they are willing to bring into your life that you would like to have from them. And that's an adjustment process. If in a long-term relationship, it doesn't end because you're changing. Excuse me, I'm just going to have to kill that. Yeah, we're all changing, we're growing, and we either find ways that we grow together and we support each other in that, or that we don't. Sorry, I've still got noise coming from my phone.
No worries.
So yeah, I mean, that is kind of what the journey is like, and how you learn with and from each other, and how you learn about yourself, and how you eventually find the places where you're clear about whether that relationship is something that is continuing to nourish you, or whether you get to the point where you know that, okay, we've done what we can with this, and we've had what there is for us, and to be willing and open and kind of vulnerable about the process of ending and moving on. I mean, I had a 25-year marriage, which was really good, and which came to an end. There's a whole story about that, which maybe I'll tell one day. But yeah, we moved on. We celebrated what we'd had. We celebrated what was coming that was new, and we're still close, but we're living different lives, and life can be like that. I think what I'm trying to say is that when you have an expectation that says, oh, I'm going to come together with somebody, and in 50 years time we'll be celebrating our golden wedding anniversary, and we will be sitting on the porch together as old folks, really enjoying that. That is a reality for some people. It happens for some people, but the minute you make that an ideal or a goal or the way that it has to be, you put yourself in a prison where there's no longer any more choice for you or for them about how life will unfold. And of course, I mean, we all know that aside from what might happen between two people that might cause people to want to go different ways, there is also the reality of life that, you know, people get sick, people die, things happen in life that are not part of your plan, or at least not part of the plan you're aware of. So there is a kind of a central thing, an important thing about how you approach life, that it does have to be in the moment and open for change and ready to deal with what comes.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, actually very exciting. But I think for people that they like to control, it's a little bit difficult. What you're saying is going to be a little bit difficult to practice, because they like to know what they're going to get into and they want to navigate the relationship the way that they want. So, but I'm sure if you let go and appreciate the person who they are and let them bring the values and the gifts that they want to bring into your life, it's much more fulfilling than trying to put them in a certain situations or certain settings so they operate the way that you want, kind of a way. So
yes,
that's...
yeah. I mean, it's not controllable, and yeah, we all have this kind of sense of it would be a bit more comfortable if we knew what was going to happen. But life is more unpredictable now, possibly, than it ever has been. I mean, we're having this conversation after 6 months of COVID-19. Well, did any of you see that coming? Because I sure as hell didn't.
True. So now that we're talking kind of to let things go as they are, maybe we should start to think about when a relationship starts. What do you think what's the beginning of a relationship?
Well, the beginning of a relationship, a lot of people obviously, struggle even to get to the point where it starts. And there's quite a lot that we could say someday about that. But the start is when one person has a feeling for another and recognizes something that they think, oh, I'd like to get to know you better and closer. And so at some point somebody has to initiate that. And I mean, for centuries it was kind of supposed to be the man who did that. That's not true anymore, or certainly not so much. And women, or even in those days, had very were very good at letting men know, hey, it's about time you said something. But yeah, it starts when somebody says, would you like to come out for dinner with me? And you start that conversation where you each begin to explore, who are you? Where did you come from? What do you think? How do you feel about this? Do we seem to have anything in common?
Yeah. What's very valuable for me in any relationship, doesn't matter, is the bonding of two people, two souls together. And do you have any tips? Because lots of people, I feel like they have relationships and the bond is not very strong between them. Or I've seen even friends that they say they're close friends, but they don't know the rainy days of each other that much. I mean, how can you be a close friend if you're not there for the rainy days? So what makes a very good relationship? What is the bonding that it's necessary for this, like, a relationship that can be fulfilling, a relationship that can teach you a lot of things about yourself, let alone for others?
Oh, that's a big question.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it starts with the place where you actually care about the other and the other cares about you. So if there isn't some sense of, um, I'm here for you because I care about you, as well as you being here for me because you care about me, there's a mutual uh, willingness to go into the places of, yeah, I'm going to be with you when things are not comfortable. And that's as true of a friendship or a business relationship as it is of full blown kind of romantic lover type relationship, because everybody is going to have times when stuff comes up, either stuff internally that people get upset about, or things that come up in their lives that are a cause of difficulty. So being willing to kind of walk alongside somebody else with that, I mean, and that is as true of a good business partnership as it is of any other relationship. That it's not always going to be easy, and people's people's issues and people's lives will come into the frame.
Jon, I feel like I'm very good in connecting with people, bonding with people. And I think one of the reasons that I feel that connection is I love humans. I love to create relationships because I feel these relationships it's exciting for me because they teach me something about myself. Also, I love to understand their story, where they're coming from, what's happening, why they're afraid in life, what makes them happy. So my relationship with people is more deeper usually, even with my friendships or lovers or business partners. And I see that even, and when you have a deep relationship, I mean, I never think that the longevity of a relationship is the goal. It's the journey that you're going with that person and the things that you're learning with each other and about each other and about life. It's important. But a lot of people don't have that. They go to meaningless relationships thinking that, oh, I've been in a relationship for 7 years. How can I just let it go now? Or and I know a lot of people that they are in that setting, they don't even know their best friends that much, they don't even understand the other human being that much. I don't know why they call themselves best friend in that setting. Or relationship wise, their romantic relationship doesn't have any strong roots. So I don't understand why even they're in that relationship. What's the purpose of it? Just to be in a relationship, just to have a friendship. But I think more than just meeting the right person, it's you as well, how you look at life and how you bond with people. There's a quality there, or there's a talent there, I think. Don't you think so? I'm asking you this so maybe we can tell our listeners if they do certain things, they can bond with people better in their lives.
Yes. So I have a mix of answers, because yes, there are things that you can learn, and it's stuff that I've uh, written about that will help you make all of that work better. I mean, again, I think the reason you're here having this conversation and I'm here having this conversation is that we both share that perception that relationships are interesting and fun and juicy and places to learn about other people and ourselves. And for other people who share that feeling, then, you know, I would want to support and encourage them to have that. But again, it's the same as that isn't what everybody wants.
How
Some people are
come?
quite people are different, and so this is where it kind of comes back to my, you know, the question that I started with, like, what is it for you, you know, for each listener?
Yes.
What is it that you really want from your life and your relationships? You know, there are some people, let's say some women who are going to be completely content to find a man who is a good man, who will give them children, who will provide for them, who will support them, and she will be much more fulfilled by the relationship that she has with her children than she is by the relationship that she has with her partner.
Yeah.
And if that's who you are, you know, that's okay too. Where things go wrong is when there is a mismatch between who you are and what you want, and what you then go out and pick and do in your life. That is when things get messed up. And that's why I keep coming back to this question of, okay, what do you really want? And it does get contaminated when you start to have an idea, you know, like with soulmates or the one, that you're going to find a partner who is going to be absolutely everything.
Yeah.
You know, that
Everything that doesn't exist.
that's unreal. You know,
Mm.
if you don't have a life outside where you have friends who bring something into your life that you wouldn't have with your partner, if you don't have things in your life which turn you on that you're doing, you know, you're going out and I don't know, you're exploring your passion for macrame or knitting or golf, because that's what you love to do. And that's different from, you know, your partner doesn't want to do golf or doesn't want to do macrame. But having those things that are outside that you bring into the space of your relationship, you're bringing in the fulfillment of you, and you want them to be bringing in the fulfillment of them. And that is what creates something which is just a richness of living. It's not even just about the richness of the relationship. Your life is more important than your relationship, in my view.
Nice. I think now that you're talking, I feel what I'm craving in life is connection with other people. That's what I'm craving. That's what I'm doing in my life. I'm trying to have connections with human beings, and that's very important for me.
Yeah,
Uh, Interesting.
and for most people, that's important. I think it's connections of one kind or another. It's when we start to put labels on what those connections are or what they should be. That's what can get us into
Yeah.
trouble.
Yeah, when actually I feel not comfortable when I'm disconnected with myself, and that really makes me unbalanced. So that's why I need my alone time every day to reconnect with Matilda. It's kind of strange, or maybe it's everyone like that. I don't know, but I
A
like
lot of people certainly
to
are.
be connected. So interesting. See, I'm learning something today from my about myself. So, we talk about all these nice things about relationship. What about toxic relationship? How do you define it? Why we allow a toxic relationship come to our life?
Ooh, another big question, and possibly one we could have a whole separate conversation on at some point. But I think the bottom line of it is when you somehow have made yourself less to
Important.
the extent that you are willing to settle for something that is actually not really feeling good, and where you justify that staying there, to the extent of the people who put up with abuse for years, and the answer for that in a way is the same as the answer for having a good relationship, which is about developing the strength of yourself and the understanding of you are worth better. So yeah, that for me is the core of what happens in toxic relationships, where people start to accept things from another person that they really shouldn't, and equally that they accept things that are being brought up in themselves about how they behave towards the other person, but underneath they know this is not really how I should be, and this is not really how I want to be. But finding the courage and the willingness to choose, okay, I can see there's something here that I need to sort out, and I'm going to take the steps that are required to sort it out.
Yeah, I think toxic relationship is a big one, and maybe we can have another session just talking about it, because lots of people, I think, at one point in their life, they've been in a toxic relationship with a neighbor or with a loved one. Usually that's the loved one. Or even sometimes you have a toxic relationship with your parents. Not necessarily you're fighting. No, from maybe outside, everything is nice, but it's a toxic relationship for your soul, because maybe they're not allowing you to become who you are, and you're becoming someone that they're picturing you to be. So I think it's a very big topic, especially I think for people from my culture, that you have to, when you're in a relationship, in a marriage, or brothers, sisters might have a toxic relationship. They don't like to announce the you need to kind of cover it instead of talking about it and trying to solve or come out of that toxic relationship. So I think, but one thing that we can talk about is boundaries. Do you think how we can put healthy boundaries in any relationships we have? Because I think with the healthy boundaries, you're going to have a healthy relationships. So how can we come to that understanding? What is our boundaries and how we have to put it in a relationship?
Well, again, I would say that it has to do with being willing and able to honor who you are and what you need, and to honor who the other person is and what they need. And there's an interesting edge to explore around boundaries, because the flip side of boundaries is that life actually grows from the willingness to allow energy to flow. And so the more you are able to be vulnerable in a relationship, both vulnerable with yourself and with your other, in order to feel whatever is happening and what is coming up, there's a kind of negotiation that goes on, a subtle energetic negotiation, that every living entity, if you look at a cell in the human body, a cell has a membrane, and the membrane has ways that it supports what the cell needs by allowing chemicals in and by putting chemicals out, and that boundary is porous. There are some things which can come in, and there are some things which can't. And in the relationship, if you think of yourself as kind of two cells, that if you limit what can come in, then you limit what potentially that cell can become and how much you can be as an individual, your ability to receive and to grow and become more. But you have to be able to do that in a way which doesn't feel threatening. So we're all negotiating the boundaries between our vulnerability and I don't want you to go there. I don't want you to touch that issue in me right now. And the fact that the growth actually comes from the point often where we say, okay, I am going to deal with some of that vulnerability in myself so that I can allow more of a flow between myself and my partner. So yeah, boundaries are important, but not rigid boundaries. Rigid boundaries, at least in a relationship, I think tend to, they will tend to solidify and they will tend to degrade the relationship because it ceases to grow.
Wow, interesting. So honestly, to have a really good relationship with whoever you want, you have to have that, you have to give in. You have to give in. So that's the difficult part, John. I don't like to give in that much. I like to keep Matilda a little bit somewhere and not just to go in completely. But honestly, once you're explaining, I'm understanding better for you to understand what this relationship can do for you, how can nurture your soul. You need to go in with all your vulnerabilities and just trust
Yeah,
the
and
universe that
you
will
have a
handle.
right you have a right to do that in a way which feels safe for you and which is
Mhm.
nourishing for you, and to, I'm certainly not saying that you shouldn't be Matilda in the relationship, but
I'm an only
at
child.
every point there's a kind of a choice of, okay, you know if I go this way, how will my life be in a year's time? If I go that way, how will my life be in a year's time? And have an ability to sense into, okay, actually, there's more for me if I go this way than that way. And that's a navigation process for any part of anybody's life, is the ability to follow that thread of, okay, this is what's going to bring more for me.
Mhm. Very nice. Awesome, John. So I think for today's session, we have to wrap it up. Do you have anything to share? Like we have 2-3 minutes.
Well, I think in relation to what I just said about that kind of choosing and knowing what nourishes, what will be nourishing to you, I'd encourage people to go on to the Access to Possibility Facebook group and to get hold of the free ebook that's there about the 7 keys to possibility, and the seven, the way of how you expand your ability to create your own life, because that is all about this process of choosing and letting go and listening to the flow and kind of entering into the kind of space with all of life that we've just been talking about with relationships. So
Very
that's
nice.
what I would encourage people to do.
Let the flow of life be with you all the time. Very nice, John. Thank you. And we will be back next week with another episode of Relationship Secrets. Thank
Thank
you,
you,
John.
Matilda.
Thank you, listeners. Ciao.
Bye bye.